Right, time for some more grinding. Really wish this was something I could look forward to, or that would give me some meaningful stuff worth talking about. Ah, well. Guess I'll be, just seeing where my mind takes me as we slowly get our team to a level I'll feel comfortable taking on Whitney. So I have the distinct feeling I'm gonna have to train Vincent up higher than anyone else, just so he can strike at normal types. I swear, my biggest issue probably isn't the Pokemon in my team, it's the moves available to them. Especially since I'm generally gonna stick with moves they can learn via level up, like all the various wild and, trained Pokemon we run into. Whatever TMs we happen to find on the road might get used, and, HMs definitely. If I was just willing to budget some of our money on more TMs, things might end up easier on this team. But then part of the problem there is that I haven't fully decided what Pokemon we're gonna bring with us all the way to the Elite Four. And it'd be a little awkward to use a TM on a Pokemon that would eventually end up benched. Probably should have stuck with biting there. Considering how high Flender's score is on the card, it's kind of surprising to see he's not actually one of our heaviest hitters. At least not yet. He and Grimash are definitely going to stay on the team to the end and beyond, though. I'm quite the fan of Crobat after all, and it's not like I used Zubat or Golbat extensively in the first generation playthroughs. Kind of ironic that Vincent can hit the experience-heavy Drowsies a lot harder than anyone else. I'd probably feel more comfortable if I knew that he had a move that could hurt normal types even a slight bit. Yeah, definitely appreciating the Drowsies at the moment. Fingers crossed that we keep seeing more of them. But again, it's not like we can pick what Pokemon show up as we're patrolling the grass out here. Kind of wish I had the foresight to know that the Hoothoot would survive that tackle. But then it's not like we ever get to see the health numbers for our opponents. We just have to guess how much health they have based on what species and level they are. And I think I've proven that I'm not that good at memorizing things in Pokemon. It's a good thing I never bother to count just how many wild Pokemon we knock out. The number there would be outright staggering. Hell, just the number of trained Pokemon we knock out in a single playthrough is pretty damn impressive. Though I suppose it shouldn't be all that much of a surprise considering how many Pokemon trainers there are in this world. You would be hard-pressed to find anyone over the age of 10 who didn't have at least one, and given some of the trainers we fight in the earlier game, you can say there's a decent number under the age of 10 as well. Not too sure how I'd end up rating as a trainer if I actually lived in that world. I certainly feel relatively average if slow to move from gym to gym based on this playthrough, and the one I did for Generation 1, and I doubt that would change in later generations. Son of a bitch! Of all the things he could have done, He just had to disable the one move we can do to actually hurt him with Vincent. Now neither of us can harm the other. A bit of a minor inconvenience, but still, I'd much rather not switch out when this is one of the few enemies that Vincent can do damage with Lick. Good. Now to get back to actually damaging the bastard instead of draining away his attack move charges. Well, that one certainly took longer than it strictly needed to. Just a small bit of experience to go, and Vincent will level up. We're definitely chipping away at things and making progress. Now, if only that level up gave us an attack that would actually mean something in the next gym. And great, we've got another Ditto. Not that Vincent has no chance against a Ditto, but I'd rather not get into a competition of who can lick who more. For one thing, it kind of opened things up to too many pervy jokes, and for another, Ghost Type has a very annoying weakness to other Ghost types. Sure, Lick isn't an especially powerful move, and I'm sure that Vincent could do more damage with it than the level 10 Ditto. Still, if I'm wrong and we don't have enough shots with Lick to finish the job at a given point, then we have annoyingly limited options on how to fight a Ghost type. And by limited, I'm pretty sure that means just Flender and Gramash. Venus just wouldn't be able to do all that much damage. Right. Of course it was disabled again. At least that's better than losing attack charges because the enemy had Spite. Certainly one of the things I was worried about if that Ditto had the chance to send some attacks at us. Not that we're seeing all that much in the way of tactics from the enemies we're running into out here. They're literally just throwing random moves for the sake of throwing random moves. Really? Son of a bitch, running out of options against this Drowsy here. And we are most definitely going back to the Pokemon Center after this fight. Well, definitely annoying that the main Pokemon that Vincent can harm at this time of day is something that can prevent him from using his only attack move. And many of the other hostiles would ignore his attacks altogether. Ah, well, we can keep on going, and apparently, our next bit of grinding is gonna be in the morning, for some reason. Definitely doesn't look like Vincent is gonna be the reason we capture an Abra, not unless we use something like Hypnosis. Well, Endure is certainly an annoying thing to have to deal with, but only if the attack in question would have been enough to knock them down, otherwise it's just a waste of a turn. Not that most of the trainers and wild Pokemon we've run into really seem like they know how to use the moves they have at their disposal. I mean, sure, I'm not all that much of a trainer. I'm sure there are plenty better than I am on YouTube, if not in other places. But while I'm pretty far from the ceiling in terms of skill level, I like to think that I'm a decent distance from the floor in return. Right, another Pokemon that I'm not all that likely to ever use. But it's not like there's any gameplay negatives to capturing a Pokemon you don't have in your collection yet. If it was so cowardly, then it'd run away as often as an Abra. But I suppose that Abra has the advantage in terms of using teleport to get away. It's not like Snubble's body type really looks like it was meant to allow for the Pokemon in question to make a very quick getaway. No real surprise that Rattatas are just as common during the day as they are at night, at least in terms of gameplay, since they're considered a very common Pokemon type. Still, it's a bit odd in terms of nature, since last time I checked, rats were nocturnal. Why not have rabbits active during the day and rats active at night? Oh right, they don't really have a designated rabbit Pokemon in the franchise just yet. The closest thing to a rabbit in the first 2 generations is the male Nidoran line. And that's a bit awkward, partly because rabbits aren't typically seen as poisonous or having a horn between their ears. It gets more awkward when you look at the likes of Nidoking, which looks more like a kaiju than anything that would appear in nature. It's kind of funny how I have nothing against Pokemon that started off looking pretty fantastical, continuing to be fantastical, but when something starts off looking reasonably acceptable as something that could legitimately evolve in nature, becomes something downright supernatural, I'm either all in on it or I absolutely hate it. Well, that defense clearly didn't go up enough considering the level difference here. Not that we know how much damage we did in that tackle. There's nothing in game that tells you how many points up or down a given stat-affecting move is messed with things. One of many reasons why I don't generally use those sorts of moves. I know it's having an effect of some kind or another, but there's nothing to really tell you how much of an effect one way or the other while the fight is actually ongoing. And if I can't feel like it's measurable from one use to the next, then it can get a bit awkward, but then I rarely use stat-changing moves in other role-player games either, even when people say they're outright game-breakingly good. I suppose it's just one of my little awkward quirks. Sort of like how I tend to take so long grinding before getting to the next gym in Pokemon. Go ahead. Keep messing with our speed as you get absolutely crushed. Ugh, why am I even bothering being annoyed by random encounters not fighting all that smartly? Wild Pokemon are explicitly supposed to be the weakest sort of Pokemon you can run into. Not that most of the trained Pokemon we run into outside of gyms are all that much better in terms of strategy or tactics, just level. Probably because it'd be too much of a pain in the ass to program in different combat algorithms for enemies that aren't that important. The Game Boy and Game Boy Color games certainly did try to stuff as much as possible into their respective cartridges. That certainly makes it more forgivable that things are a bit on the shakier side in the older games than the newer ones. I swear, the stuff I've seen from the Switch games has eroded so much of my goodwill for the Pokemon franchise. It's actually kind of funny. It's certainly not fair to be annoyed playing the older games and let the newer ones color my opinion of them, or Nintendo's antics trying to defend Pokemon from the likes of Foul World. Still, when there's not all that much going on at the moment, it's hard to avoid my mind wandering in that direction. It's certainly not like I can talk with any great detail about China using Horn Attack on yet another Rattata, or groan at the fact that Vincent has no way to fight against these rather fragile, easy-to-dispatch foes that don't give all that much experience anyway. Can we get some more targets that can be damaged by Lick out here? Right. Of course the psychics out here are more rare than I'd like. This definitely wouldn't be a problem if I was willing to buy a TM to teach Vincent something to deal with normal types. Not that we have much money at the moment. I've been spending it all on Pokeballs to capture various Pokemon that will most likely sit on the bench for most, if not the entire game. I suppose I could just use Kurt to keep making balls, but then I'd rather not rely on those specialized things, especially when I can't exactly pick and choose what kind he makes, or how many in a given crafting session. I just grab stuff from whatever trees happen to drop it, and there's only one tree that I can find that can drop something so far. Should I chuckle at the fact that the game itself had a double take that Tail Whip did absolutely nothing there? Because even if it did, it wouldn't have meant anything. The creatures we've been grinding against have no chance to actually defeat us, which is part of the damn point when you're grinding experience points. Again, I don't generally grind anywhere near as much in other role-player games, at least not to this degree. Though I do occasionally give myself little things to do, like re-explore a previous dungeon, or revisit a previous town as an almost patrol route after some story events in some games. It just comes across as so much more mindless in Pokemon, I'm afraid. This sort of long period of grinding makes it easy to see why they eventually started to give the player the experience share item from the start, or made that sort of thing in effect for the entire game, regardless of if you wanted it or not. Grinding like this in order to prepare for the next major fight can be so utterly mind-numbing to go through. Still, that said, there have to be better ways to handle this sort of thing in a game like this. Something that could have been distinct to Pokemon. Something that helps to enhance the idea that you're raising your Pokemon, befriending them, the whole spiel that the various media says you do with the various creatures. I'm sorry to say that for the most part, it doesn't feel like the game's actually do enough in that regard. At best, you get some lip service about befriending your Pokemon, and there's some invisible number counter for how many friendship points you have with a given Pokemon that raises up various arbitrary reasons. That mechanic was in fact introduced in this generation. There are notably 3 Pokemon that can show up on your team due to a high friendship stat when they level up. A Golbat can turn into a Crobat, and an Eevee can evolve into either an Espeon or an Umbreon, depending on the time of day when the parameters are met. These are not things that can be seen in the wild. You can only gain them by training and caring for your Pokemon, or at least what little counts as caring for them in the games. I kind of envy China at the moment. I'd certainly like to sleep off what's going on right now. We just have to hold on a little longer in this clip, then we'll make it to the next moment when I saved. Again, really hoping we're going to be done grinding relatively soon, but I have no clue how long that's going to take until we finally get to the point where I start going into the 3rd gym of this generation. It's funny how I want to be properly prepared for the battle, but at the same time I want it to arrive already. I suppose I just get more impatient when I'm working on the commentary of a Let's Play than when I'm playing through the game itself. With China and Flender both being pretty worn down, that's as good an excuse as any to head to the Pokemon Center. Progress is indeed being made slowly but surely. And considering how slow it feels when I'm fast-forwarding the footage, I'm sure it would feel like outright torture if I wasn't.